proposal offers the opportunity to put the vacant lot parcel back into taxable and productive use. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant?
All set, thank you.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward, provide your name and address and comments. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. I do. Apparently we have no additional speakers, but I do have a question for staff and or our colleagues in the law department. And I bring this up only because it's in the notes from the comments received back from the departments indicating that the property at 123 is past due for taxes. Is that of consequence or concern for the commission as it considers acting on this?
The finance department will not sign the copy of the approved subdivision until back taxes are paid.
Okay.
So
we can act, and if we act in the affirmative, things will catch up in the finance department. Oh, okay.
That is
Thank
correct.
you.
Do we have to state that as a condition, or that's just
You do
inferred?
not. They will not sign.
They do it automatically.
Right,
Perfect.
exactly.
Perfect, okay. I think we're in a position then, unless anyone else has questions of staff, to close the hearing. We will do that for R-23-20. Is there a motion for action on this re-subdivision?
Secret.
We have to.
Whoa, look at that. Well, we had a streak going of 2 cases, and we were doing just fine. And then someone fell off the wagon here.
You're in trouble.
I know.
As to application R-23-20. Has everyone had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1 in your packet?
Yes.
As you've already acknowledged your familiarity with the short EAF Part 2, do you have any concerns about moderate to large impacts with this project?
No
No.
concerns.
Because you don't believe there will be any moderate to large impacts, I recommend that you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and to complete the EAF Part 3 accordingly.
Thank you. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of the seeker motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Seeker motion is approved. We may now proceed to action on the re-subdivision in itself, if proper. Is there a motion on the re-subdivision?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Just again, for the record, noting that the lot block pattern has already been disrupted, so the new lot won't have any impact on traditional patterns in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The re-subdivision R-23-20 is approved. We move to yet another hearing. Special permit.
the next public hearing is SP-90-44M1, special permit modification for a care home in order to modify the site plan, floor plans, and elevations on properties situated at 703 West Onondaga Street. Helio Health Incorporated is the owner, and Kathleen Gaffney Babb is the applicant, and the property lies within a residential Class B transitional zoning district.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah, that's better. My name is Bob Seigert. I'm with Shop for Architects at 1111 James Street, Syracuse. And I'm joined here by Tracy Lord Mortis, representing Helio Health.
Good evening, Tracy Lord Mortis, Helio Health. I'm the Director of Mental Health Residential Services, and the law office is located at 555 East Genesee Street.
Thank you both.
All right. Do you want me to go over just a quick surmise?
Kind of an overview, right.
Okay. So Helio Health is looking to make a bunch of improvements to this property. They purchased this property in 2021, so they really haven't done much to it yet. They're planning to put an elevator addition. It's basically 3 stories, and there's no elevator, and they have a lot of people.
Really?
Well, it's a care home for 24 people, but when they built this in 1990, they didn't put an elevator on. So anyways, we're doing that. There is access directly to the exterior from the lower level and from the first floor, just not the second floor. So I think from a handicap accessibility standpoint, it's not been a problem. Plus, Helio Health has a lot of care homes, so they can, put residents where they need to be. But still, that's the elevator will help a lot in this case to make it more flexible and easier for the residents here. So that's the primary. That's the primary improvement. We're also replacing an exterior deteriorated stair. It hasn't been used in years. It's a concrete stair, and it has fallen into disuse. It's not safe, and so it's blocked off right now. We are going to replace that in kind. There is a full story difference in grade outside, and so we talked about whether or not we really needed a stair there, but since the residents have access on both floors, it made sense that we have that stair for them to access both levels. We're expanding the parking area, and in fact, we're shifting the parking area a little bit farther away from Ridge Street. We're putting in a resident patio down in the lower level, and I'll get into that in a minute as to why. We're putting in additional sidewalks, and we're putting a dumpster enclosure. There is no dumpster enclosure there now. There are dumpsters. So that needs to be done. In addition to that, we're doing a bunch of interior work, mostly interior finishes, improvements to the laundry room, a new trash recycling room on the lower level, a new elevator machine room, obviously. And we're also doing stormwater improvements that I've been in touch with Jeff and Mirza and Vinny, which they have approved. And basically, we're creating additional impervious area, and we're putting in a couple of dry wells to take care of that, and they said that they were satisfied with that. So that's in essence, that's what we're trying to do here. We're also asking for a waiver for a fence in the front yard, a 6-foot fence. Currently, I know the zoning ordinance only allows a 4-foot fence. Right now, they have a 6-foot fence actually between them and the neighboring properties. They also have it along half of Ridge Street. There's a chain link fence there. Again, Helio Health did not install that. I don't know why it's there, but it's there. The rest of Ridge Street and Onondaga Street have a 4-foot decorative metal fence. Again, because of the type of residents who are here, they have cognitive difficulties. These are people who need guidance and need assistance and need some amount of supervision. And people have, I won't even say from the neighborhood, but people outside of the property have jumped the low fence. They've walked in through the other areas where there is no fencing. And they've often taken advantage of the residents. And the police have been called many times. It's, as I noted in my letter to Jeff, if they could, they'd put gates and vehicular gates around this and really enclose it. But we've also talked to the fire department about that and first responders, and there's a concern about that, about being able to access the property quickly. And so we backed off of that and said, if we could have a 6-foot fence, that limits the locations where people can enter and exit the site. And it's within reason that the staff can monitor those locations. Right now, it's a much bigger area, plus, and I'll say along Rich Street, much of Rich Street is already a 6-foot fence, and I know it's not it's not legal, but they've already got that, and that has limited access over there on that side. And the last thing I'll say is the fence along Rich Street is in the right-of-way. It's about a foot, a little bit more than a foot off the property line, off the edge of the sidewalk, and the property line is in about 7 feet from the edge of the sidewalk on that side. The rest of it is pretty much contiguous with the inside of the sidewalk. But we will move that fence, obviously, so it's on the property. We will also move the fences along the rest of Ridge Street and Onondaga Street back about 4 feet from the edge of the sidewalk. So it's not right on the sidewalk. Right now, it's probably less than a foot along Onondaga Street. So we will move that back, and we're agreeable to putting planting in there if you want. It's in the right of way, so I'm not going to. Not going to pronounce that we're going to put anything big there, but we could put some small landscaping in there if the commission so desired.
Okay, thank you. So it's mostly along the Rich Street side where the fence is in the wrong place?
Correct. It's from the driveway, which is on Rich Street, okay, back to the south. So that's the area. If let me approach. This section. The line is right there, and right now the fence is just a little bit more than a foot off here. So it's that. Once you get up here, it changes. You can see the property line is within a foot of the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for the applicant?
For clarification, I would just like to point out to the commission that the 6-foot fence will extend along both Ridge Street and West Onondaga Street. And I would like to ask for clarification from the applicant that the only waiver from the screening regulations you're requesting is the height requirement.
That's correct.
And that all other screening requirements will remain in effect, such as the 50-50 opacity, whatever the correct terminology is.
Yes.
And that the fence detail is illustrated on sheet L103C.
Correct.
What you're proposing.
Correct. And that new package that Jeff handed out there, that's got the latter pages of that have some photographs of that type of fence. Just to be clear.
Further questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to clarify, since we talked about a chain link fence, the fence that we're seeing is a wrought iron fence.
Correct. It's a decorative metal fence. It's not really wrought iron anymore, but yes.
For my generation,
yes.
our parents before us,
exactly. We all call
it wrought iron.
Exactly.
No matter what they're pressing it out of now.
Exactly. And that will go all around. So we're not putting chain link up in between the properties. It's a wrought iron, metal fence all the way around the property.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
One last question. Excuse me, one last question. This really doesn't affect our decision, but I'm just curious, will the residents have to leave while you do this project, or will they be able to remain on site?
I think they'll be able to remain on site.
Yeah, that would be my expectation as well.
Yeah.
Yes, that the residents would be able to stay in their homes, and we would just work around them.
Yeah.
Great.
The interior work, is painting and new wall protection and new flooring, but that can be done basically one resident room at a time. They'll do the public areas in there. So there'll be some restrictions, but we don't, normally when we do these, we do not try to relocate all the residents. We'll get down maybe by one bed or two and be able to get through the project.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's no interest in doing any planting along the fence. It's just the fence itself that would add this security feature.
We can. We haven't shown it. Obviously, there's a concern over visibility, and both traffic-wise as well as for visibility, in and out of the site. Just they like transparency. But we could put in low planting along there. Normally to make an impact on it, I like putting it outside the fence, but that would be in the right-of-way. So, if that's okay, I certainly would be willing to look at that.
I just wanted to make sure that I don't see any on the site
Right.
plan. I just wanted to make sure
Right.
that it wasn't being proposed at this point.
It is not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we're good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward. Provide your name and address and your comments. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. We have no additional speakers for this application. We are in a position to close the hearing, so we will do so. And if we can now do our seeker process, please.
Sure. Has everyone had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1 that's in your packet?
Yes.
You've already acknowledged that you're familiar with the short EAF Part 2 questions. Do you believe this project will have any moderate to large impacts?
No.
No.
Okay. I recommend that you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and complete Part 3 of the EAF accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to that effect for SP-90-44M1?
Move to grant a negative declaration.
Second.
Thank you both. Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Seeker declaration is complete. Is there a motion for the special permit modification proposed under SP-90-44M1?
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Waiver. A move approval granted.
The one waiver?
Yes.
We just approved seeker. Did we? Okay.
Is there a
Someone second?
second?
Second.
Motion with, to approve the special permit with the waiver requested.
Right.
Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion before us. If there's no discussion, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That special permit on West Onondaga Street is approved. And we have one more small project left under public hearings. Thank you. Good evening.
Have a good night. Small projects.
The next several public hearings are companion applications to one another, consisting of a re-subdivision to combine 17 properties into one new lot, a project site review to demolish several existing structures and construct a 5-story apartment building on residential Class B zone properties, and a special permit for an apartment house to facilitate said construction of the 286-unit apartment building for those properties situated in residential Class C zoning districts. In an attempt to make things easier to understand, I provided you with a summary report in addition to individual reports for the companion applications. For those with a hard copy, the summary report is on page 155 of your agenda. For those accessing Dropbox, I think I just put it in there under summary. Again, the overall project is to demolish existing structures and construct a 5-story, 286-unit apartment building with 150 parking spaces, and starts with the re-subdivision to combine 17 properties situated at 1219 to 1221, 1225 to 1227, 1231, 1237, 1301, 1311, 1317, and 1323 East Genesee Street, 206 and 208, 210, 212, also known as 212 to 214, 216, 218, 222, and 224 Ashworth Place, and 316 Pine Street. Matthew and Marjorie Gant, Northside Genesee Associates LLC, and the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation are the property owners. Northside Genesee Associates LLC is the applicant. And again, the properties lie within a residential Class B and residential Class C zoning district, specifically 1219, 1221, 1225, 1227, 1231, 1237, 1301, 1311, 1317, and 1323 East Genesee Street, and 206, 216, 218, and 222 Ashworth Place lie within a residential Class B zoning district and are subject to the project site review. And 208, 210, 212 to 214, and 224 Ashworth Place and 316 Pine Street lie within a residential Class C zoning district and are subject to the special permit review.
Thank you. It's quite an introduction. There's a lot going on here: re-subdivision, project site review, and a special permit. So we turn it over to the applicant to provide the summary.
Thank you very much. So my name is Brian Bouchard. I'm with CHA Consulting, project engineer working on behalf of the applicant. Chris Geiger and Chris Berkshire are also with us today from Northside Genesee Associates LLC, who's the applicant and the developer. So as Jeff mentioned, proposed project along the 1300 block of East Genesee Street. We did give some informal presentations previously, but I'll go through a generic summary of the project and the developers for the benefit of the public hearing tonight. So Chris and his development partners are the owners of 505 Walnut, which is directly across the street on the south side of Genesee Street. That includes a very similar project with apartments, Peaks Coffee, and an internal parking garage. And they also own the majority of the land that currently consists of the project site. The project location, as you can see on the site plan that's submitted with the packet, north is to the top of the page. So East Genesee Street is our road that is to our south. And this is essentially the block that's bounded by Genesee, with Ashworth Place being to the north, Walnut to the west, and then Pine Street to the east. So these existing properties would be combined into one contiguous parcel for the redevelopment, as Jeff mentioned, under the re-subdivision, which is a companion to this application. And that the site is currently split zoning. So there's portions of the site that are residential B, and there's portions of the site that are residential C, which complicates some of the approval structure with certain requirements applying to each district that he described. Generally, we are falling under the RC and RB rules and regulations, but we have considered the progress that has moved forward within Rezone Syracuse, understanding that at some point in the future there will be new zoning regulations for this area, and that obviously with our building standing the test of time should be compatible with that future use program as well. So the generality of the project is it's a residential apartment project, which will be mostly market rate, but will include a mixed income component. for the project for workforce housing. And we'll also be meeting during construction the MWBE requirements for construction forces, along with the city's residency requirements for construction as well. And we're working with SIDA to develop those specific details, but we will meet or exceed that guidance that's provided by the city. The building in general is a 5-story building with a basement level parking garage. Total, we have 286 dwelling units, which are a mix of studios 1s and 2s in terms of apartment dwellings. The garage itself contains 143 parking spaces, and there's 7 surface parking spaces off of a small service lot off of Pine. The building itself has been positioned up along Genesee Street. This will allow for obviously numerous existing curb cuts from those existing residential houses to be removed along that Genesee Street corridor, and we'll have a single access point to our parking garage off of Ashworth Place. We did prepare a CHIP generation letter that we provided to staff today that I believe is being circulated. I brought copies as well in order to support the findings that this, because of the residential use with the number of apartments that we have, essentially creates an additional 80 trips per hour compared to what you could imagine as 8,600 trips per day on the Genesee Street corridor. So relatively minor traffic impacts, and we've provided that data to support that finding. As you do look at the site, the East Genesee frontage, so to the bottom of the page, is actually higher in elevation than the back of the building on Ashworth Place. So we described this before, where this is a 5-story building as you view it from East Genesee Street with an underground parking garage. But as you come around the back of the building, the site's much lower, so you'll actually be able to drive straight into that basement level parking garage. And what we've done with the building to maintain 5 stories is created a step in that elevation of the building so that it still does not exceed 5 stories when you're facing Ashworth. And what we've done is created an outdoor terrace area that could be used by the residents and also for screening of mechanical equipment on that upper level. Because the parking garage will be at grade with Ashworth, and we want to maintain the residential character of Ashworth, there is actually a row of at-grade residential units along the street frontage there to hide that portion of the garage. So the only portion of the garage that will be visible is the garage entrance door. The main entrance to the building in terms of pedestrian traffic is the residential lobby, which is in the south west corner of the building, where we'll have our amenity space and residential lobby. So that main entrance faces Genesee Street, which also faces the connective corridor on Genesee Street in that business district that we're adjacent to in terms of the East Genesee Regents Association down the road. Building massing in terms of architecture, as you can see on some of the renderings, the building massing has been created such that East Genesee Street facade has been broken into different modules, where it's not just one long face of the building that you've maybe seen on some other projects, but it's broken into 4 individual components, and inside of those components there's an amenity courtyard that also faces Genesee Street with the intention of activating that streetscape along Genesee. When we also look at Genesee Street in this area, it's a very wide right-of-way, 99-foot right-of-way, so there's a lot of separation. Even though our building is positioned at the right-of-way line, there's a lot of separation between the curb line and the street traffic to the actual property line that we can use to our advantage with improving the public sidewalk and also creating sidewalk connections to those ground-level residential units for the tenants that live on the first floor, and also sidewalk connections to the courtyard and amenity areas for them to access as well. As we talked about before, we did meet with the East Genesee Regent Association at one of their past meetings and have garnered their support for the project, and they've provided letters of support that I have with me tonight to distribute. We've also met with other departments such as the City Fire Department to talk about fire access to this building and their support of our reduction in the front yard in order to make sure that the building is close enough to the street to allow fire apparatus access along Genesee, which is going to be their primary firefighting response area there. This project is obviously very similar in scale and size and scope, and some of the waivers that we're requesting, as you've seen with other projects, as we start to set a precedent for sort of the character of the area and what the vision of the city's new zoning plan will be. This particular site and its surrounding area, mainly to the north of here, is also part of the neighborhood revitalization strategy area, which is defined by the city of Syracuse as an initiative that has certain goals to provide new housing options and to basically reinvigorate aging and deteriorating housing options that exist within this area. So we do fall within this area as well. Aside from EGRA, we also have letters of support from 4th District Councilor Allen, 2nd District Councilor Hogan, and 5th District Councilor Montoyo, along with the Land Bank. So what I'll do is turn it over to you for the public hearing and any questions or questions that you may have or the public may have. But as far as procedural requirements, this is part of our journey along the approval process, and the other portion of this would be the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals requires that the seeker determination be made before they can take any further action on their variances, because there's Planning Commission waivers and there's BZA variances associated with the project. And I understand, I believe that you're prepared to go through that part too, so I can also answer or help with any project-related questions with respect to those questions and answers that you might have. So with that, I'll hand out some of these letters of support, if you don't mind me to approach, Mr. Chairman.
No, please do.
Yeah, I think we just got them.
What you've received is the traffic impact statement, the comment in favor from the Land Bank, and then 2 emails with a number of attachments from one individual writing in opposition to the proposal.
And
Thank you. So I just gave Sue a packet for each one of you that has those counselor support letters as well. It also has an extra copy of the traffic study in case you want to read it twice.
I would like to point out for the Planning Commission that the overall proposal deviates from the zoning rules and regulations in a number of ways, but specifically with respect to the front yard, side yard, structural coverage, density, building height, and parking number and location regulations, necessitating 5 variances that are under consideration by the Board of Zoning Appeals and 8 waivers under consideration by the Planning Commission. Of these 8 waivers, 2 waivers are for density and parking requirements for the residential Class B density and parking requirements that are under project site review, and then 6 waivers from the residential Class C front and side yard structural coverage, density, building height, and parking location requirements that are under special permit review. In making any motions for approval this evening, if you do, I would ask that any motion for the special permit and project site review address the waivers for those particular applications. And all this is laid out in item 4 of the summary report that you've been provided. And then each individual waiver is laid out or specified, as well as in the summary report, but also in each individual report for that particular application. The Commission may wish to ask the applicant for justification for any of the requested waivers.
I think actually that would be a good next step here is for you to kind of check off those waivers that are requested and provide a rationale for those. That would be helpful.
I could do that. So again, to try and uncomplicate things, there are 2 zoning districts for this singular project. Density are 2 of our waivers, because there's a density of a portion of the project to exist in RB, and there's a density of a portion of the project to exist in RC. In the RB zone, a residential project needs to provide 1,000 square feet of land, essentially, per dwelling unit, and our project provides 277 square feet. in that specific component of the residential Class B district. So the density in the Class C is about the same, it's 270, although in residential Class C it requires 2,500 square feet per dwelling unit. When you look at it as a total project, which we can't because they've been separated because of the two different zoning districts, the average is about 275 square feet per dwelling unit. And obviously this justification comes down to density and being able to provide the most efficient use of land. It also, as I mentioned, is within the neighborhood revitalization area, which specifically calls for greater populations of apartments and dwelling units to be located within walking distances to the existing business corridors, such as the East Genesee Business Corridor. And that when you also look back to justify density, the comprehensive 2040 plan also goes through one of its goals and recommendations, which is economic development, and specifically to facilitate higher residential density along neighborhood business corridors. So this is meant to support, and these are quotes from the comp plan, is to support and encourage high-density residential projects on properties adjacent to commercial corridors to promote more foot traffic. So this is interaction and vitality amongst the existing business corridor where you put population in order to support those businesses. This density request is very similar also to some of the other projects that you've seen with the project on South Crouse that we just went through late last year, which was 310 square feet of land per unit. In theory, Syracuse right across the street from that, which is 380 square feet of land per unit. And obviously under rezone Syracuse, there is no density requirement. With respect to parking, this is a strange one because part of the parking is up to you and part of it's up to the BZA, but with parking, the project as a whole, as I could describe it, is that we have 286 units and we have 150 parking spaces on site. What it's been modeled after is essentially the half a space per dwelling unit, right? Which would be under the future zoning, but this is also not a specific purpose-built type project. So our unit mix is singles, ones, and twos. So it does not have 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, and other things that you've seen at some of the student projects over Long Theory. Our parking is very much comparable to those projects in terms of the unit count, and that in your letter that you have from the East Genesee Region Association is mentioned that there is not as much of a concern about parking because we are 3 blocks away from places like the Syracuse Stage, the restaurants, and the office places that are over there, which we've talked about before. Parking location. So this one is easy to describe because parking must be in the same district as its use. So here we have one singular parking garage that you're going to park in, but a portion of that parking garage exists in one district and not the other. So essentially we're asking you to waive that requirement because the project exists as a whole, and the parking garage is not remote in any type of way. The others are yards. So we have front yards and side yards. So under the RC district, Ashworth Place, which is to the north page here, front yard requires 30 feet. The majority of our frontage is greater than 20 feet along there, where you can see the building step back, but there is a stair tower and utility room with that appendage in orange that you can see on the westerly side of the building that does encroach on that front yard up to 3.2 feet. So again, the majority of this has actually been pulled back away from the building or from the property line from previous proposals so that we can have those sidewalk connections to those ground floor residential units and have other areas available to us for landscaping and street trees and to reconstruct that city sidewalk along Ashworth. That's also consistent with some of the staff comments that we've received for landscaping as well. The side yard in the northeast corner, there's a residential property that we're abutting. This requires 25% of the lot depth for that particular area of the project. Jeff had calculated this at 45.3 feet because of the depth of our whole lot, and I'm not sure if it's the whole lot or just the portion that's RC, but our building respects that property line by 8 feet. Again, there wouldn't be any yard requirements per se under what we envision the future zoning to look like. This has been pulled away from that property line, both in terms of our adjacency to it from previous proposals, but also that we're not encumbering that entire side yard because of the way that the building has been set back further off the street along Ashworth. Height, so the RC district, which is a smaller portion on our site here, requires 2 stories at 36 feet, and our project is 5 stories with a maximum of 63 feet. Justification for this, the majority of the building is in the RB district, does not have a height requirement, but also that height also includes the ability to enclose parking within the parking garage, which occupies space within the building. And obviously under future zoning, and the precedent that's been set with other projects, including 505 Walnut right across the street is actually a 6-story building, and ours would be 5. The existing building on site, that's called the Roosevelt, which is one of the existing apartment buildings, is 4.5 stories-ish. It's actually 5 stories exposed on the north facade, so it's really not much different in terms of height and scale compared to the existing zoning, or the existing building that's there. And then structural coverage. A portion of the structural coverage has been deferred to BZA, but your task is with the RC district structural coverage, which is the building occupying the site, 25% required. Our portion in the site is 58%. But again, going back to what the project looks like as a whole, because lot coverage and structural coverage are just trying to designate a built area on the site, our total is 75.5%. Structural coverage for the whole parcel. The RB district requires 40% plus 40% parking. So the way that our zoning was written a long time ago is that buildings were standalone and they had a supportive parking lot to include an entire impervious area of the site. And in the RB district, that would be 80%, and we are less than that because we have, again, occupied more of the site with building, but we do not have a flat surface parking lot taking up 40% of our site that would otherwise be allowed. And then again, some of the future zoning requirements are allowing up to 90% total impervious coverage, which again, we would be under in that case. So there's a variety here. Some applies only to a small portion of the building, but hopefully I've described it in a way that makes sense as a project as a whole, even though you have to administer your zoning based on very specific zoning requirements.
Actually, thank you very much. That was a
I can start at the beginning if you need me to, right?
run through.
In an attempt to confuse the matter, with respect to the parking waivers, for the residential Class B zone properties under project site review, you have the authority to waive the residential parking requirements. You do not have the authority to waive the residential parking requirements under residential Class C. However, you do have the authority to waive the parking location requirement under for a special permit under residential Class C. So what I'm saying is if you are inclined to waive the residential parking requirements for the RB under project site review, you are then able to waive the parking location requirements to allow the residential Class C parking requirements to be located on the RB zone districts. So those two kind of go hand in hand.
Indeed, they do.
Who's on first?
Well, let's thank you for walking us through all those waiver requests and the rationale that you provided. That's really helpful, and you did it in a very coherent fashion, so thank you. I can see you picked a very easy project to bring to us. But before we move to the next, let me just pause and see if the commission members have any questions for you while you're at the podium before we ask for public comment.
All set, thank you.
Just, am I correct in understanding that the disposition of the conversation with the Zoning Appeals Board involved the seeker approval from here? If we approve the seeker, then it goes back to the Zoning Appeals Board?
That is correct. You acted as lead agency. You sent notice to all involved agencies. They signed off on you performing that task. So you need to do that before they can actually vote.
And beyond that, we would need to then go get the variances before this board could formally take action on the application itself.
Right.
So yes, you are correct.
So if we approve the seeker tonight, then there's no other action really that we can take tonight? It goes back to the zoning appeal board?
No, you can vote on the matters that are before you.
Got understood.
As I say, you picked a really simple, straightforward
Wonderful.
project.
At least it's still light out.
Yeah. For the moment. Okay, then if there are no additional questions, thank you, don't go far.
I'm here.
Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward. And remember, it's we have 3 different applications, but it certainly makes sense if you have a comment on one of them to come forward and share your comments.
Thank you. I'm Andy Brewer. I'm here representing Huber Brewer Construction Company, 148 Berwyn Avenue in Syracuse. I'll start by addressing your comment, Chairman Kulik, that this is maybe not the simplest one, but I will also say that all the simple ones are taken already, right? We're at that point.
Understood.
In the development of this community. And I will offer my praise to this development team for the work that was done across the street. Many of you are probably aware that Huber Brewer's taken a role in a number of these housing projects in the East Genesee corridor. I personally believe, and I hope many of you share the opinion, that the 505 Walnuts development across the street is perhaps the best aesthetically achieving of them, to be a little political. I think it fits in very well with the neighborhood. I think the selection of materials, I think the articulation along the Genesee Street facade, they all are very successful. And I credit this team for the selection of materials and some of the articulation on this project that does mimic some of those same qualities. I want to speak to the construction employment, as I often do in scenarios like this. With certainly upwards of 400 construction employees on this job, I think it's very important to the sector. There's not a lot of specialty craftsmen on a project like this. This is definitely a Syracuse-based construction force that would be building it. I want to echo what Brian had previously said about the makeup of the team in terms of diversity and equity goals. We've already worked with SIDA under, I'll say, some of the new rules of equity, and the 10% or better minority and women business-owned enterprise will certainly be very achievable on this job, and we would pledge to do so. And also the city resident labor requirement is something that we're increasingly working to improve, and we think would be attainable on this job as well. Thank you. And lastly, I just want to mention that last year I was invited with a number of, I'll say, stakeholders in the economic development space, Center State CEO and others, to present to Micron and their people team on projects that we had in the pipeline for market rate and affordable housing projects. And this was amongst a handful that we discussed. I think you see a lot in the newspaper lately about suburban development and exclusionary zoning and some of these topics. I think it's easy to forget that some of these projects right here in the urban center are very important to our regional economic development goals for Micron and hopefully the other businesses that will come with it. And I think this is a very appropriate project. It's not an easy one, but I think it's appropriate not only for those regional goals, but for what we should be trying to do to achieve this density right here in the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Other individuals who wish to speak in favor of any one of these 3 applications, please come forward. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to any of the 3 applications that we are now discussing? Please come forward. The re-subdivision, the special permit, or the site review.
Good evening, everyone. In the interest of time, I won't restate everything that was sent to you previously, but I would like to just follow up with a few questions regarding some things.
Can you provide your name?
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's William Wolf. I reside at 1221 East Genesee, which is one of the properties that is listed in the application that was just discussed. Now, as the gentleman stood here, he referenced many letters of support that were received from various organizations. But one thing I did not hear is what letters or what conversations were had with the current tenants who reside at the properties that are currently habited. Granted, there are a few properties listed that are vacant and have been vacant at least for the 5 or 6 years that I've lived at 1221 East Genesee. Also, I have a question regarding the population density calculation that was brought up, and specifically, when was that done? Was it done prior to the Laurel that is currently being built, and which I believe is currently subjected to delays that are affecting residents who are looking to move into that unit soon? Does that include the property that's being built on Genesee and I want to say University? Does that include the proposed project to be built where the Scholar Hotel currently sits? If all three of those, well, the Laurel is already in construction, so is the other project, but let's assume the Genesee or the Scholar Hotel project is also in the works and later approved. Exactly how dense is that area gonna be? Because currently living across the street from the 505, I see firsthand how congested things could be. There are signs saying you can't park on the street. However, everyone does. And sitting here hearing that there will be half a parking space for each unit shows me that that street is just going to be lined up with cars as it already is. So again, I rest on everything that's stated in my papers. I just wanted to note my objection for the record, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Other individuals who may wish to speak in opposition to any of the three applications now under discussion, please come forward.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, evening.
My name is Cynthia Lewis, 314 Pine Street. So I'm hearing, didn't understand a lot of it, but I'm right in the midst of where they're talking. And if you put up a 5-story building, my view is gone completely. I haven't had anybody address me on this. He's talked about, about the parking. We already have a parking problem. The people on East Genesee are parking on Pine Street. They're parking on Ashworth. They're blocking part of my driveway. On numerous occasions, I've called down here to the city to see what I could do about having a sign or something put up so this wouldn't cause me headaches. When we get snowfall, I'm literally having to scoot out of my driveway because of the parking issues already. And I don't see this being any better. This is gonna be worse. And when we have games at the SU, they're parking all the way down on Pine in Ashworth just to go to the Dome. So to mix that with a 5-story building, it's going to be a monster of a headache for anybody around there. I mean, there's still quite a few residents around there. I can only speak for Cynthia, I haven't been addressed. No one has come to me about this, address this at all. I get letters in my mailbox. I'm an SU student. My parents want to buy a house. Can I buy your house? In my door, all of this stuff. But this is not good. This is not good at all. I built that house from the ground up. I raised my 3 children in it and some of my grandchildren. I don't want to see this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other individuals who may wish to speak in opposition to any of the 3 applications now under discussion, please come forward. I don't think we have any additional speakers. Brian is the applicant's representative. You have the opportunity to address some of the comments made in opposition.
So just a point of clarification, the population density is, the density we were discussing is obviously a density requirement for the project, so not necessarily a population density as a whole.
The neighborhood.
And what I was doing was comparing what the density required for this project is in relation to the projects that have been approved as far as a precedent. So their densities versus ours, not necessarily the population of the area as a whole, but I did go through some of the guidance under our comp plan that calls for higher residential density within the area. And in terms of parking, I do know that Chris and I had discussed his existing project, which is 505 Walnut, and having, the parking garage is full, but there's not many people that are waiting for a spot. So in terms of comparable demographics to how you would park, per unit or per bed, we could probably summarize some of that if we needed to, but I mentioned a couple of them which are very similar that we've developed within the area. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Geiger, 120 Ocean Avenue, Amby from New York. Been up here in front of you a few times now. I want to address two of the comments, one made by Ms. Lewis and Mr. Wolf. First off, Ms. Lewis, absolutely, we're absolutely concerned about, her project. I've owned some part of that block on East Genesee Street since 2007. And as most of you know, I'm not absentee by any means. I'm here, I'm very active here. So, I am not a pushy guy when it comes to asking people to buy their property. It's just not who I am. I've spoken to her, and she probably doesn't remember, to be fair. Many years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when we went into contract to purchase 316 Pine Street, Daniel Stazone from the Land Bank, to my understanding at least, from his word to me, was that he approached Miss Lewis, and I said, listen, I do not want to pressure her. She's lived there, I know it's her house, and she did build it. So we want to respect that. I just wanted to clarify that. As far as Mr. Wolf, yes, he's been there a long time. One of the clauses in our lease that's been that way for a couple of years now, because this has kind of been in the pipeline, and we knew about New York State rules that anybody that's been there 2 years or longer needs 90 days notice to, before we ask them to leave. By no means are we just throwing them out tomorrow. We've given him 90 days, I believe it was as of April 17th, so he has until July 17th. I'm not sure about that date exactly, but that's the fact of the matter as it relates to his lease contract with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the commission members for the applicant or for staff?
Actually, a procedural issue. Should we do seeker before we close a hearing?
No. You should close the public hearing and then undertake your seeker.
So if we close a public hearing, this has nothing to do with this one in particular, but let's say we issued a positive declaration. Would we have to go back and open a public hearing to finish whatever our business was?
No.
No? Okay.
Okay, then if the commission members have no outstanding questions, I think we can close all three hearings and proceed one at a time in terms of our seeker process. I think we can just take them in the order as they appear in the agenda, starting with the re-subdivision, R2319. Ron.
So we're going to walk through seeker as to all three applications before you. There's a reason for that, and that is that seeker doesn't want you to break pieces of a project apart, even though through our system it's separate application. It's called segmentation, and we don't want to do that. So we're going to walk through the seeker for all three applications.
Just to put a fine point on that also, seeker looks at the project as a whole. It doesn't look at each individual, as Mayor said, it doesn't look at each individual variance or request. So you're doing seeker on the totality of the project.
Yeah. So we're going to deviate from our script, but bear with me. So has everyone had a chance to review the full EAF Part 1 contained in your packet?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the 18 questions for the long EAF for Part 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I have them with me if you need a refresher. So normally what happens at this juncture is that staff will have prepared the Part 2, and I'm going to walk you through it. And for brevity's sake, there are 18 questions with subparts, and staff identified 4 possible areas in which there could be impacts from the project, or there are impacts, but your job is to decide the level of those impacts. Okay, so we're going to jump to those 4 areas using the Part 2 long form. The first one is impact on land, and we marked yes, proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site. And that's a yes, it's going to do that. But then there are all the subparts, and basically staff analysis was that as through A through G, there was no impact or a small impact may occur. So I'd like you to take a look at that and make sure you feel comfortable with that analysis. And again, if you don't have your Part 2 with you, I have one for you. Do you have it?
They do not have one.
Actually, I'll take your copy, please.
Okay.
2 requests over here.
Yeah.
Here, too.
I have extras.
Just to be safe. Hold on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Me 4.
As long as you went to the trouble of making copies, we will consume them.
They're not here, though. They're here somewhere. Hang on. All right, I will let you take mine, and then I'll just ask you to pass it back to me after you've had a chance to look it over. But I want you to focus on items A through G, and that is how staff analyzed them as well.
We have the form for us to study.
Okay.
Just, but I don't, unless I look through here. Attorney? Yep, attorney. Thanks for the short.
Okay, sorry, it's a little painful tonight, but we'll be,
We'll manage. We'll manage.
all right, so are you comfortable with the assessment that there are no or small impacts may occur?
The analysis looks accurate to me, in my judgment. Yep.
So the next item is item 13, which is impact on transportation. And there will definitely be an impact on transportation, but again, your job is kind of this balancing test of determining whether it's going to be a small or no impact or a moderate to large impact. And again, also now the applicant has completed their assessment from the
Traffic count study.
the traffic count study. staff also analyzed that there would be no or small impacts from the traffic. And that was even before we had the traffic count study. And once again, I'll read them to you, then I'm going to send it over to you. Projected traffic increase may exceed capacity of existing road network. The proposed action may result in construction of paved parking area for 500 or more vehicles. The proposed action will degrade existing transit access. The proposed action will degrade existing pedestrian or bicycle accommodations. The proposed action may alter the present pattern of movement of people or goods. And I think I'll just point out what the applicant had said and is in the application about the location of the parking garage relative to the major street there.
Thanks.
Okay. Road network.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize for the having to pass the paper around. The third impact is impact on energy, and this is a tricky one because it's almost always yes, because there will be an impact on energy. But again, here we have some parameters. It's called the Seeker Workbook that helps you walk through that analysis. And basically, we're going to ask the applicant to come up and tell us, but the kind of signifying threshold is, are they going to have to upgrade a substation or create a new one? Or is the project going to heat or cool or use energy for over 100,000 square feet? We know it's not 100,000 square feet, but I think, Brian, are you prepared to answer that, or?
We will not need, so Brian Bouchard with CHA, so we will not need any upgrades to substations. There's actually a fairly robust interconnect between two substations that exist both east and west of us that will service not only this project, but the other projects in the East Genesee Street corridor.
So once again, we have the 4 sub-questions. I want you to feel comfortable with the analysis that, yes, there's an impact, but that it's a no or a small impact. And the threshold, again, is on the line of, are they, it's in one of the questions, are they using 100,000 square feet? Are they going to upgrade the substation? So, again, staff's analysis is that it's a no or small impact.
Okay, you address that. Okay.
Now you're satisfied with staff's analysis of that? Okay. So the last impact is item number 17. And of course, you're free to have gone through this and have some discourse on any of these, but these are the ones that, in preparing part 2, staff flagged as worthy of further attention with a yes answer. And that's consistency with community plans. And this one's a little trickier also because among most of the impacts, it's a small or no impact, but here, one in particular is the proposed action is inconsistent with local land use plans or zoning regulations. Obviously, because they need a number of variances and waivers, they are inconsistent with the plan. So you have to take that into consideration in determining the level of impact on this one. If they get the waivers, then, and the variances, then there's no inconsistency. Also, keep in mind that rezone would eliminate the need for the variances. The waivers also, right?
I don't know.
I know for sure with all the variances, they go away with rezone. So you have to keep that in mind in determining whether you think that's a moderate or large impact.
With more complexity to the project, given its, not just its location, but its timing on the calendar.
Yeah, it's tricky. And then the proposed action may cause a change in the density of the development that's not supported by existing infrastructure or is distant from existing infrastructure. We've talked about the transportation network, and that's another one of your considerations. And generally speaking, the project is increasing density, going from a pretty low density residential to a high density. But that is what the comp plan envisions for this area. So I'm going to pass this around to you and let you look at it again and see if you're satisfied with that analysis, that there's no or small impacts, with the exception of the variances and waivers, but that's something you're going to decide tonight. So here it is. And again, I apologize for having to pass it out to you each time.
I think we'll survive just fine.
Thank you.
Are you satisfied that, with respect to question 17, consistency with the community plans, I'm so sorry, that the project will have only no or small impacts? In the context also of that you're going to consider waivers and variances tonight?
Yes.
So, move on.
Is
Go
there,
ahead.
I'm sorry, was there another one?
No, that's it.
I noticed that number 18 wasn't completed. Is there a part 2 where it is?
Oh, no, we didn't. It is completed. I didn't bring Jeff's in with me, so I had to redo it while we were sitting here.
Well, that came out tonight. That could be a
Right.
yes. No. Argue that one.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at this in a little more detail. This is the staff making the recommendations, so consistency with community character, we've marked this yes. Again, there are a number of sub-questions determining how you conduct your review, the items that Jeff or staff has posited as possible moderate to large impacts, and it's not his decision, it's your decision what the level of impact is, okay? So he can mark it, and it's really, he's marking it as a flag for you. Hey, just make sure you consider this. The proposed action may displace affordable or low-income housing in an area where there's a shortage of housing, like the rest of the city, and the proposed action is inconsistent with the predominant architectural scale and character. So I'm going to let you look these over, and you can determine. Oh, thank you. Here's extra copies. Flip to the back.
Oh,
That's
boy.
where the last page is what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a sense of how many low-income units will be lost as a result of this? Sorry.
There's no low-income.
There's no income, none of our low-income?
Low-income housing, and they're only, there's one apartment building that's within the project area, and 9, I think, single-family homes.
Right.
So they may all be rentals, but they're not proper low-income housing. So
Understood.
in terms of existing low-income housing, I think there's no impact.
Okay. I'm just curious, because there was an aspirational comment made about I know you've considered some of the rezoning requirements, but the 10% low income requirement that's in rezone, which you're not obligated to do in the existing zoning regulations, have you given some consideration to that?
Yes, absolutely. So we've committed to making 12% of our units an average of 80% of the local AMI. Now, that doesn't mean that all of our units are going to be necessarily right at 80%. There could be some at 60, there could be some at 100, but we just met with SIDA last week to kind of go over that, and it's kind of like a rubber band effect, if you will, right, where it's going to land right at 80 or less is basically where we're going to be on 12% of the total unit count.
Thank you.
And then I think you would keep in mind at this juncture the comp plan disposition to have more density, and that there are a number of projects, and I'm just giving you facts, not trying to argue persuasively in any way, that there are a number of other dense developments that have been approved or in the pipeline in this corridor and in this area. So please keep that in mind when you're determining whether the action is inconsistent with the predominant architectural area. In fact, I think in the staff summary, we kind of talk about how the area is changing.
It's changing. Mm-hmm.
And it's connected to the university. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sad?
I am.
So you're going
Everyone else have
tell me
No questions.
now whether. So we've agreed. You've indicated on the other three questions that you did not believe there was a moderate to large impact, and I'm going to ask you the same thing about number 18. Do you believe that this project will generate a moderate to large impact on any of the sub-questions?
I do.
No.
So question to staff, if we have other questions about whether it's moderate to large impact, what other analysis do we go through?
There's actually a thing called the Seeker Workbook, which I keep referencing, that kind of walks you through it. But I think that the best approach might be, because of the impact of a positive deck, is that you pose those questions to the applicant, and if they're amenable to it, to come back with more information to address those concerns specifically, rather than try to just, let's vote on this and get it over with. I think you need to ask them to go deep.
Unless they have the ability to answer your questions.
Yeah, so certainly, if there's questions, so obviously when we go through this form, the end result is that even if there is an impact, if that impact is no or small in your opinion, then a negative declaration is issued. Once you check a box for a moderate to large impact, should you move the seeker resolution, it would become a positive declaration. So what we would ask as the applicant is if there are specific questions or concerns that give you a feeling of moderate to large impact, that we would be able to at least provide additional information, whether it's a study of the corridor or a listing of adjacent buildings, or if it's specific to the architectural aesthetic, or if it's specific to the mass and how we've broken down the mass over time, that we can at least have a chance to react to that and provide at least information for you to consider before you actually take action on the seeker. So it depends. If it's a small question, maybe I can answer it right now, or if it's something larger that you would like a more formal analysis rather than just the architectural elevations and building plans that we've provided, we can do basically anything to support the record.
I am always the deliberative one, so I'm going to take a step back here. was what we were talking about. Whatever we do with this doesn't change the landlord's ability to give people notice that the property status is going to change. But in terms of use and intensity, I am pausing on the moderate to large impact, so I want to frame the right question here. No, I'm ready to go forward.
Work through it?
I'm going to work through it, yes. There's not really a... this is a process. This is not so much a question you can answer black or white, so...
Understood.
So do any of the other board members have a question relative to any portion of the EAF that you've gone over this evening? In terms of impact? Okay. Do you want to say?
No, go ahead.
If not, I would ask the board to make a motion based upon the findings in your EAF, whether you are comfortable moving it as a negative declaration based upon the fact that you do not determine that any of the impacts are significant, or if you do, I would ask you to ask the questions now, and then we can make a determination whether or not you're going to issue a positive deck or you're going to ask for additional information.
Just to be clear, since this is a democratic process, I may have a concern about the answer to one question, but the balance of the commission may not.
Correct.
And that's for all of us. There may be
Yes, right, exactly.
a sub C or a sub G.
Correct. So except for the last series of questions, we were fine. And if I'm a minority vote for one answer, that doesn't necessarily impact whether or not the majority is in favor of a negative declaration. But you asked the question, and I just want to be on the record that I do think, in answer to those questions, that there is, whatever they are, not small but moderate, the other one. But that's my view.
Could you elaborate on which you consider to be moderate impacts? Just for clarification.
Yeah, I just got to find the right piece of paper.
18, or was it one of the earlier ones?
Yeah, it's 18.
I think it was 18 specifically.
Yes, it's 18. I guess.
That it's inconsistent with scale and character, primarily. I mean, it is. But that's my view. I think it's substantially different from everything but the one project right across the street. With all the blocks and all the other directions, it is inconsistent with that character. It's only consistent with a building that was just built across the street, which anyone can check the record. I objected to when that was proposed for that same very reason.
I think I'd like to just talk through your thought process and deliberations on how to determine if an action will have a significant adverse impact. That is to help you get to A, whether you want them to come back with more information, or B, declare a negative deck or do a positive deck tonight. How to decide, this is straight from seeker, if an action will have a significant adverse impact upon the environment. Two key characteristics of possible impacts that should be considered in determining significance are magnitude and importance. Magnitude assesses factors such as severity, size, or extent of an impact. Importance relates to how many people are going to be impacted or affected by the project, the geographic scope of the project, duration and probability of occurrence of each impact, and any additional social or environmental consequences if the project proceeds or doesn't proceed. Each impact of an action must be judged by these two characteristics. Generally, bigger impact, larger magnitude, projects are more likely to need more detailed analysis. The characteristics of importance requires us to look at an impact in relation to the whole action. The short or long-term or cumulative nature of the impacts also need to be considered. So I'm not going to unpack that for you, but
It's actually pretty straightforward.
yeah.
I'm ready to go forward. I understand, like I said, the difference in the analysis for all the problems we've gone through, that there may be a moderate as opposed to small or no impact, but I'm ready to work through that.
As to question 1, do you believe this project will have any moderate to large impacts? You've already stated no. That was the impact on land. As to question 13, you've already stated that you don't believe the project will have any large to moderate to large impacts. And question 13 relates to traffic or transportation. As to question 14, impact on energy, you've already stated that you don't believe the project will have any moderate to large impacts. As to question 17, you also stated, we've added one on here, at Chris's question, you've already stated that you don't believe the project will have any moderate to large impacts. As to question 18, consistency with community character, do you believe this project will have any moderate to large impacts, or no, or a small impact? So I put it to you, this is how we're moving through.
We should just all
Right.
vote and pass it.
Right.
You
So
can-
I guess we're asking.
I
does the
have
board
said it
want to make
does,
a
so you three need to
motion?
say something.
Is there a motion to move the seeker?
I'll make the motion to move the seeker now. We've analyzed the places where there were questions raised. If staff identified there are questions about the impact. But I will move at this point to raise, or to approve seeker.
To make
With
a
a negative
A
declaration.
negative declaration.
Is there-
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion. Discussion on a seeker motion. If there is none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? The seeker motion is approved. And we proceed.
Now you're going to
Now
work
you're going
through.
to work through your actual application.
Individual, we have 3 specific action items in front of us. Just taking them in the order in which they appear on the agenda. The first is the re-subdivision, R23-19. Jeff, can you recap the number of?
Absolutely. The re-subdivision is to combine 17 properties as identified in the agenda into one new lot. And the purpose of the re-subdivision is to facilitate construction of the 5-story apartment building.
Okay, thank you. I think it's, given the nature of this project and the 3 interrelated action items that are before us, I think it behooves us to sort of recenter ourselves when we come to each of these action items. So everyone, including especially myself, can refocus on what's the immediate question in front of us. So thank you for doing that. Is there a motion on the re-subdivision proposal?
As to R-23-19 re-subdivision, combining 17 properties into one new lot, I would move to approve it.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a motion, is there discussion on the motion for the re-subdivision as proposed? If not,
I have a question, but I'm not sure if it actually relates to the re-subdivision or one of the others. But with respect to the assistance that may be given to current residents who are going to be displaced from that, could you just speak to that issue a little bit? I mean, I think there is some concern that's been expressed about that particular issue. Is this the appropriate?
No.
No, okay.
It is not. Because it's not before you. It's not something that you have the purview to control one way or the other.
Understood.
And we are going to assume that they are following New York state law.
And I should have recalled that we had closed the hearing. I guess we could have reopened it, but that clarification precludes the need to do that in this instance. Additional discussion on the motion before us for the re-subdivision? If not, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? I believe the re-subdivision is approved. And we now move to the project site review.
Just as a reminder, the project site review is needed to review that portion of the proposal that lies within a residential Class B zoning districts. And with respect to the residential Class B zoning districts, the proposal necessitates two waivers. One for the residential Class B density requirements, in that no multiple family dwelling shall be erected, altered, or used which does not provide a lot area of at least 1,000 square feet for each family or dwelling unit. The floor plans illustrate 203 dwelling units within the RB zoned portions of the project. I will state that this is a judgmental analysis. The floor plans do not line directly up with the zoning district boundaries, but I did determine that 203 dwelling units lie all or mostly within the RB zone portions of the project. As such, the proposal requires a lot area of at least 203,000 square feet for that RB zoned portion. The proposed lot only has 56,395 square feet within the RB zoned area. Therefore, it necessitates a waiver of the residential density as listed in item 14 on the summary report. It also necessitates a waiver from Part B, Section 1, Article 7, Paragraph 9 of the zoning regs, in that one parking space shall be provided for each dwelling unit. Again, 203 dwelling units are situated within or substantially within the RB zoned portions of the site, thus requiring 203 parking spaces. The applicant is proposing a total of 150 off-street parking spaces, of which 83 must be designated for the residential Class C zone portions of the site, thus leaving only 67 parking spaces for the 203 dwelling units within the RB zoned portions of the district. So those are the two waivers for the project site review.
Thank you for that summary. And then is there a motion on the proposal before us for the project site review, PR-2305?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And does the maker of the motion and the seconder intend to include the requested waivers, the two waivers that were just summarized by Jeff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion?
Just for the record, because we do talk about every re-subdivision and then every project site review, we do talk about the effect on blocks and on the neighborhoods, and we have to always put it in context of what we've approved before. In this area now, we have approved other large structures, multi-dwelling units, and every time we have to think about practical, not just the environmental impact statement, but the practical fact that areas are going to change when these structures are built. 3 to 4 years ago, before the great change in all of our lives, we had said one of these proposed structures was too far away from downtown. And so now that this is in front of us, where it is proposed, it's difficult to say, having all these changes made to where the sites are located, it's now difficult to say, no, keep moving it. Because it in many ways has accomplished what we were concerned about the first time this major unit was proposed. I'm just trying to explain that for the record, that we're being consistent as we vote on this as we are with every large-scale apartment project.
I would respectfully disagree. I think the one across the street is the anomaly. The block with Planned Parenthood and the Ronald McDonald House is what in the land use plan is called the Adapted Mansion District. And to the east is small scale 1 and 2 family housing. So the project that was approved across the street to me is the anomaly. This is building on the anomaly, but on either side of it and on the north side of Ashford, it's still all small scale stuff. I appreciate your view. We just have a difference of opinion, that's all, which is a great thing about democracy.
Right, and it's a struggle. It's not there is no ultimate.
Indeed.
Right.
We don't get a stone tablet, unfortunately.
I agree.
I checked this morning and it still wasn't there.
Good discussion. Further discussion, please. Then if there is no further discussion, then those in favor of the motion for the project site review signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
And any abstentions. So the project site review, PR 2305, is approved. And we now look at the third and final action item for this project on East Genesee Street.
This is a summary, again, the third and final companion application to this project is SP 2308, a special permit for an apartment house to facilitate construction of the proposed apartment building within the residential Class C zoned portions of the site. The special permit does necessitate 6 waivers. 6 waivers from the residential Class C zoning regulations with respect to front yard requirement, side yard requirement, density requirement, height limitation requirement, structural coverage requirement, and the parking location requirement. Specifically, the minimum front setback shall be 30 feet. The site plan illustrates a front yard setback within the RC zone portion of the site along Ashworth Place of 3.2 feet. Also, the RC zone side yard shall have an aggregate width of at least 25% of the lot width, neither of which shall be less than 10 feet at any point. The site plan illustrates an 8-foot side yard within the RC zone portion of the site along Ashworth Place. Also, no multi-family dwelling shall be erected, altered, or used which does not provide a lot area of at least 2,500 square feet for each dwelling unit. With 83 dwelling units situated within or substantially within the RC zone portions of the project, the proposal requires a lot area of at least 207,500 square feet within the RC zoned areas. The proposed lot has only 22,431 square feet of RC zoned area. Also, no building or structure shall hereafter be erected or structurally altered to exceed a height of 2 stories, provided, however, that the cumulative height of any building or structure shall not exceed 36 feet. The elevations illustrate the north elevation of the proposed apartment building along Ashworth Place with 5 stories and an overall height of 63 feet, and the south elevation along East Genesee Street with 5 stories and an overall height of 60 feet. Also, the maximum permitted structural coverage of buildings and structures within the RC zoned portion shall be 25%. The site plan illustrates 58% structural coverage. And finally, off-street parking facilities shall be located within the same zoning district. Approximately 83 dwelling units are situated within or substantially within the RC zone portions, thus requiring 83 parking spaces. Approximately 21 spaces are located within the RC zone portion of the site. So those are the 6 waivers necessitated for the special permit review.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion for SB 2308, which is the special permit component of this project that we've been discussing?
Move approval granting the 6 waivers articulated by staff.
Second.
Thank you both. Discussion on this motion for the special permit approval. There's no discussion, then all in favor of the motion for the special permit, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? So the special permit on SP 2308 is approved. That concludes our public hearing scheduled for this evening, but not our business. We will be here longer. Some of you may not, but thank you all who participated in one fashion or another in the public hearings this evening. We move on now to the new business portion of our agenda. And Jeff, would you please?
The first item of new business is Z2855, a project plan review to construct a 2.5-story addition on an existing structure situated at 201 Walnut Place. William Ozakowski is the owner and the applicant, and the property lies within a planned institutional district. The scope of work includes, but is not limited to, a new driveway, new sidewalks and ADA ramp, a 2.5-story addition on the west side of the structure, and new siding, windows, and roofing. The property is located within the Syracuse PID Subdistrict 7 Block C and complies with the Subdistrict 7 District Plan. The existing structure is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the proposal is subject to review by the Syracuse Landmark Preservation Board, which is tentatively scheduled to review the proposal on or about May 4th. The City Planning Commission may defer acting on the request pending receipt of review comments from the Landmark Preservation Board. However, if the Commission is prone to approving the request, any approval may be conditioned upon meeting the requirements of the Landmark Preservation Board.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that we would wait till we get the Landmark Preservation Board comments so that we can take those into consideration during our deliberations.
Is that a motion? No, just discuss.
I mean, if it has to be a motion, I can make it one, but I'm starting with it as a recommendation.
Right.
And it's already on their agenda for their subsequent meeting, is that correct?
Yes. Again, it is tentatively scheduled to be reviewed by the Preservation Board on May 4th, meaning it's been referred. I've talked to staff. It is on their agenda for that day.
Okay, so it's a complete application.
Yes.
Where it can be considered. Okay. I'd like the concurrence of my colleagues. I agree with my colleague. We would want to see the Preservation Board's analysis and any recommendations that come from that analysis. So it seems premature for us to act on that this evening. So
yeah, we also kind of understood that as well. You know, the applicant has come along with the project team. So we were kind of at a starting point of, we've met with Syracuse Landmark Preservation Board numerous times already to get to a certain point where we understand and have revised the plan to their assumed satisfaction, although we'll be at them May 4th, but would be happy to share with you the general plans for what's happening and get any feedback that you would have as well.
I think we appreciate the fact that the team is here, but we probably do want to hear the recommendations. So it's a straight line if we know what the zoning board says. And the Landmark Preservation Board's comments will be helpful if we get it all at once.
If I may, John Lange, Costello, Cooney & Fear, I'm a land use attorney. We do appreciate the board's time tonight. Our clients did come tonight specifically for this reason. We understand that it does have to go back. We were there earlier. A lot of the comments that we heard in the first round have been incorporated. If the board has just a few moments, perhaps we could just quickly go through a presentation so they're familiar with the actual application, if that's acceptable.
This hour it would be.
The issue is you're going to have to come back next time anyway.
Correct.
And do the presentation. And so I think for the board's position is they want to have the benefit of having the Landmark Preservation Board's comments so that when they do review the project, they have the totality of the facts in front of them. So I think for that reason, they would like to hold it until their next meeting, which I think will coincide with your next meeting at the Landmark Preservation Board in the beginning of May.
It will follow the Preservation Board meeting by about 11 days.
Yeah, so we will have the
15th.
Yeah.
And I respect that, but I have to go out in the hallway and see my client after we're here, so I have to ask.
You're doing your job. We understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will see you folks again in the very near future. And yet we have additional new business items.
Yes.
Go ahead. No, I apologize. I have the old agenda.
He took the liberty of adding to the new business.
The new improved agenda.
So, yes.
6 pages.
I did revise the agenda over the weekend. By adding 2 new business items that I provided at the beginning of this evening's meeting. First is SP 1811M1, a special permit modification for a restaurant to modify the floor plan on property situated at 298, also known as 238 West Jefferson Street. Pacific Properties Incorporated is the owner and the applicant, and the property lies within a central business district, general service A zoning district. Again, the applicant's requesting to modify the floor plan in order to facilitate a new tenant, La Melange, on this property. The City Planning Commission approved a special permit for a restaurant known as Lemongrass on June 4th of 2018, granting a waiver from the sign regulations to allow 7 signs totaling 114.1 square feet. The scope of work of the proposal before you tonight includes interior renovations to the existing restaurant that establishes approximately 2,500 square feet of seating customer area and 130 square feet of bar space. Late this afternoon, I did receive proposed signage from the applicant that you do have before you. They are proposing 2 window signs as illustrated on the handout. One would go on the glass door facing Jefferson Street. The other would go in a window facing the breezeway going through the property. So they are proposing 2 window signs, approximately 16 inches in diameter by perhaps 20 inches in height.
Oh, I saw that here.
As such, the proposal does not require any new or expanded waivers from the zoning regulations.
This is impact.
And subject to any questions you may have.
So it's all interior work except for 2 signs.
Correct. And then the 2 signs would be laminated on the inside of the existing glass door and an existing window.
Okay. Does any of this interior work require a negative declaration?
Require what?
For a special permit, is there a negative declaration required?
Is there a seeker?
Seeker
requirement?
Yes,
requirement.
anytime you take action.
I don't want to say any time. I want to make it special. I don't just willy-nilly talk about seeker.
I hear you, I appreciate it.
But this does qualify as an unlisted action, which would be subject to a short environmental assessment form.
Yep.
All right, let me look again.
So I'll let you do your
We have to do seeker before motion.
Yes, yeah. So what, who was in here before? Is that?
I will point out to the Planning Commission that this is a minor modification to an existing special permit, and as such is not subject to public hearing. However, the Planning Commission does have the purview to require a public hearing if you deem it appropriate.
Well, let's start first with questions. Do the commission members have any questions about the nature, scope, purpose of the project?
All set, thanks.
No, thank you.
Okay. Next question would be, is there a sense that this warrants a public hearing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then if that is the case and we don't have any additional questions, I think we're ready to go through our new seeker process.
Right. My dog could do this. Has everybody had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1 attached to this new business, item SP 1811M1?
Yes.
It's been a while, so I'm going to start again with this. Is everyone familiar with the 11 questions of the short form Part 2?
Sorry, I'm not seeing it.
We don't have it.
Oh,
It should
it's in there.
be
It's,
in your handout from tonight after the plans.
After the plans, thank you.
Got it. Sorry about
Step
that.
back and please take a minute to review it, to do it
Right,
properly.
just to be clear, it's carefully and cleverly folded inside the plan.
Exciting.
Yeah.
It was at the back.
We want to see if we were alerted this hour of the night, so that's fair.
Yeah. We're ready?
Yes,
I don't want to rush you. I do want you to look at it, okay?
all set, thank you.
All right. Has everybody had a chance to review the short EAF Part 1 as to this project?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. You've previously acknowledged that you're familiar with the 11 questions of the short EAF Part 2. Do you believe this project will have any moderate to large impacts?
No.
All right. Because of that, I will recommend that you vote to issue a negative declaration under seeker and complete the EAF Part 3 accordingly.
Move approval of the negative declaration. Second.
That's the negative.
That's the form itself. Yes. We've done it 10 times and I still don't remember.
That's okay. And there's a second? Thank you. Discussion on the motion before us for seeker. Is No discussion, then all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The seeker motion is approved, and we may now move toward action on the requested modification of the special permit for the restaurant.
Move approval of the special permit request.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Just to note that even though this is happening in the National Register District, it's all interior work, so there's really no impact on the historic resource.
Good to note, though. Further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? SP-18-11 M1 is approved. We have one final piece of new business.
The final new business item is 3S2304, a 3-mile limit subdivision review from the town of Onondaga for the lands of DeMauro subdivision in order to realign 2 properties situated at 5,000 Brittany Lane into 2 new lots. Daniel and Linda DeMauro are the owners and the applicants. The purpose of the subdivision is to convey 0.2 acres from 5,000 Brittany Lane to lot 235 of the Brittany Hills subdivision, section number 10A. The town of Onondaga approved the re-subdivision on November 28, 2022. The application included a subdivision map of the lands of DeMauro, part of farm lot number 132, illustrating lot 234A with 200 feet of frontage on Brittany Lane, and lot 234C, a landlocked parcel to be conveyed to the adjacent lot 235 to the east. The subdivision map has been reviewed by the City of Syracuse Department of Engineering. Pursuant to the seeker regulations, the proposed subdivision is an unlisted action, and the town of Onondaga made a negative seeker determination on November 14th of 2022. So there is no need to make a seeker determination on this proposal.
Okay. Thank you.
And as I think you just said, but I always like to reiterate, the engineering office has reviewed and signed off on this 3-mile limit case.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. In that case, are there any questions pertaining to this? If not, is there a motion for action?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? If not, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? 3S23-04 is approved. And we now move to old business.
The old business item before the Planning Commission this evening is Z2854 for rezone Syracuse to revise and update the city zoning regulations and maps citywide. The city of Syracuse is the petitioner. As a reminder, the City Planning Commission held a public hearing on rezone Syracuse on March 28, 2023, during which 28 people spoke either in favor of or in opposition of the proposed zoning regulations. The Planning Commission closed the public hearing on March 28th, and the City Planning Commission is responsible for providing a recommendation to the Common Council, which is the deciding authority regarding the proposed zoning regulations.
Thank you. All that is accurate. We closed the hearing back in March, and the Common Council is the final decision maker on this, and it looks for a recommendation from the Planning Commission.
And I think the only other piece of information that has happened since the public hearing is that the county planning board, is that the right word? The county planning board is required also to make a recommendation, and they have approved the recommendation to the council.
They've approved the recommendation. They send a recommendation to approve.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we're the last ones in line. Come up with a recommendation. Is there discussion on this item?
So I have a question for staff or Corp Counsel. Now that our body has reconfigured, does it affect our ability to vote because some of our members have not heard
No.
the proposal and some have taken knowledge with them to Virginia? Just saying.
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And for the record, I believe your new board member is well-versed in rezone and has attended every public hearing there's been.
Just had to put it on the
Yes,
record.
thank you.
As part of the-
Thank you for asking.
As part of the deliberative process.
Information's in the public domain. So in that instance, is there a motion to formulate a recommendation that would go to the Common Council with respect to the rezoned Syracuse ordinance update?
Question, in moving the project forward with a recommendation to the Common Council, are there any stipulations or comments or recommendations that Planning Commission can make beyond approving?
Yes, you can include in your recommendation items for consideration. And then the Common Council can accept those and choose to consider them or not as they see fit.
And by specific items, you mean zoning items or process items?
Well, I would think what is contained in the new ordinance and or the map.
Okay.
What do you mean by process?
Well, there have been a lot of comments about public engagement, for example. And I think a lot of those comments really are the result of COVID and not the lack of public engagement, but the lapse that has happened between robust public engagement that happened before COVID and then public engagement that happened after COVID. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to stipulate in some fashion that we would like the Common Council to perhaps have a more robust discussion with public engagement in their approval process?
I can almost guarantee you that the Common Council will hold their own public hearing and open it to the public before they make a final determination. So again, I would go back and say, if you have specific comments about the content of the zoning ordinance as proposed or the map, you could include those in your recommendation and ask the Common Council to take note of them or consider them, but otherwise, no.
Right. Okay. So the issue, a specific content issue that concerns me is I think the procedure for amendment is confusing and vague, and it's not clear to me, for example, whether or not the Common Council can initiate an amendment or whether that has to come through petition of the residents as stipulated. It's my understanding from other portions of the document that the Common Council can initiate an amendment, but it never actually says that anywhere in that section. So that would be my question and a desire to clarify that to some extent.
Are you asking me to clarify that? Or are you
if you
asking
can.
for that to be, I cannot. My ERA may be able to, Owen may be able to, I cannot. But what I can say to you is, should you choose to make a recommendation to the council to go forward with rezone, you could include that as a comment you have for them to consider.
And the comment or the condition would be, I'm just amplifying what I think I'm hearing you say, is greater clarity around the process for amendment.
Right. Applicability with respect to 5.6A to A and B.
Even better to cite specific sections.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Could you read this out again? Sorry.
Sure. It's 5.6 ordinance amendment procedures, A, zoning amendment, mapping and zoning ordinance, 2, applicability, A and B.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Other discussion or comments? If not, is there a motion for a recommendation to the council?
So moved?
With what recommendation?
With the recommendation that I issued.
Did you just described?
But you're recommending approval
I'm recommending approval, I guess,
with comment.
clarification. Comment about clarification of that section. Yes.
Probably would need.
I think it would be more properly recommending approval with
Requesting to clarify that section.
requesting that it be clarified.
That's all good.
Thanks, Chris.
I like that.
Got it.
All those years of editing.
Right, right. And I know we discussed it during the public hearing, so I'm going to second it with a friendly amendment that, again, we clarify when the document is reviewed, if it's reviewed annually, whatever the recommendation is, to have a set time for you to review the document for updates.
So you're going to amend the motion. So the motion as it now is would be a motion to recommend approval of rezone to the Common Council with a request for clarification relative to amendment procedures and annual review.
Yes.
Yes.
Or a review process.
A review
More-
process.
A review process.
Regular review
Yeah.
process.
Regular review process.
Thank you.
And you're not
Adding that.
suggesting that if it were, you had mentioned 1 year, that it can't be amended more often, right?
No, just that they
He just
have
wants a
to
review.
I know, I
establish
just want to make
a,
sure that
right.
it's very clear that.
That's right.
it
And
can
just,
be
it's a friendly amendment to his motion so that all the parts go forward.
There's really been a lot of discussion requesting something like that, but there's nothing in the ordinance that allows for that. And I understand that would be something that we can put in the ordinance, or does that have to occur as some sort of separate action of the Common Council?
I think the Common Council can consider your comment and make edits if
Embody
it
it,
does
right.
not violate seeker.
Okay.
So that was the motion, and we have a second.
And did you accept the?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a motion amended and accepted. Discussion on this motion now before us.
Well, we do know a great deal of work has gone into it. It can't go without saying for all the parts of the law department and of our zoning office and everyone who's made an effort here. We do commend all the efforts. And we know it's very difficult to develop legislation. So it's still a work in progress, but we're grateful for what we have.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
in these two provisions of the motion could go a long way in perfecting that. So if there's no further discussion, then we'll vote on the motion, and those who are in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
And any abstentions. So Z 2854, the recommendation from the commission will go to the council for approval with the two stipulations noted in the motion. Okay. That concludes our old business, and we soldier on with authorizations for our next meeting. It looks like five new applications, plus we've held one hearing open from this evening, so that will give us a total of 6 public hearings for the May 15th meeting. Is there a motion for those authorizations?
So moved.
And a second?
Second. Sorry.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Those are authorized for the May 15th meeting. And unless there's anything else, I think our last...
Just to staff, so when we do old and new business, it's not a public hearing, and I know that there are applicants anxious who want to talk to us, like those folks who waited the entire time. So can we just like, give them a message that says, if the night's running long and there's more stuff on the agenda, we appreciate you might want to speak, but the commission doesn't have to have that. I felt really bad for them, but in that case, without the whoever they were, Landmark Preservation Board comments, it just seemed like you shouldn't do that. Or put the old and new business first in the public. Some of the old and new business.
A lot of boards put their old business first.
I mean, some of them are so short.
Very odd to put.
That's a good point.
I actually often think of, what's her name from SU, Jennifer Bybee.
Right.
She's here for like a sign, and she waits 3 hours, and we don't even ask her, because it's like, yeah, that's okay, fine, go home. So maybe
We can work on that,
Yeah,
yeah.
you all can talk about that.
Yep.
So
I also think that, I've recommended it, that the old business and even discussion items should appear on the public notice, because, for example, tonight, the public notice that went out did not include rezone. Not that the public could
I never
talk
read
tonight.
those, so I never do that. I just thought everything on our agenda was in the notice.
But I think that if someone wanted to watch the process,
Okay.
they're not getting notice that it's on tonight, because the public notice only has the public hearings on
I
it.
never read that. Huh. I thought it was our full agenda, all this.
Well, I would be an advocate for some discretion at the staff level to kind of figure out what might move to the front of the agenda if it's now this is not an ironclad thing where you kind of look at something and you say, this looks pretty straightforward and it's old business and it doesn't require a public hearing. Maybe move it up in the chronology here for the reasons that Chris said, so someone doesn't spend a whole evening here when it's a very simple thing. Now, I know those can be misjudged. You think something's going to be simple and it ends up being more complicated. But by and large...
or maybe look backwards at, say, over the last year, what have been old and new business items, and if they were always fairly quick, even if out of 10, one of them takes a little bit longer, they're never as long as the public hearings end up being.
Right.
So, just a
Work
thought.
on it, yeah.
I will point out to the commission, for your information, I do point out to the applicants for new business, old business, minor modification, even modification consideration, that if it's not a public hearing, they are not required to attend the meeting.
Okay.
Right.
But it might be one step further to say, and we're not obligated to have them come to the podium either. So that's, I think, the problem, is that some people feel like they want to present, but if we don't need them to, then they've wasted our whole night listening to everything else we did. But anyway, y'all can think about it. It just felt really bad for those people, so.
Right, good ideas in terms of helping us go forward. So if there was nothing else, the next thing would be a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Any abstentions?
I'm sorry.
It's okay, some might call
I'm sorry, who seconded?
It's not on the record, but the study
Yes.
session, I think, is a great thing. And
Who's going on record for seconding the adjournment?
Chris and Walter, I think, were one or two.
Chris moved, Walter second.
If we want
You were
to
pretty fast with that hand.
use it to learn, we ran over tonight, so we might want to start at 5:15.
I think it was fair.
Yeah,
Yes.
5:15.
I mean, I thought it was incredibly helpful.
Yes, yes.
So if you're all up for it.
And if you want to bring something to eat, you can.
Snack while we're chatting or
Yes,
something.
yeah.
I really
Wine and cheese, oh, wait.
Oh, yes.
When I told my kids I was on the planning commission now, they ask, is there pizza?
Consumable supplies.